The wedding was in full swing in an expensive restaurant in the capital. The guests were drinking and dancing. The orchestra was playing cheerful, fashionable music. The table was full of delicacies, and only the bride sat at the wedding table, so sad and tired, as if it was not her holiday at all. The groom, sitting at a neighboring table, was getting more and more drunk. The mother-in-law was entertaining the ladies of high society, and poor Mary could not find a place to sit. Her legs poured. Her back had long been petrified. The babies in her belly were dancing lezginka, and the hard corset of her wedding dress rubbed her ribs mercilessly. The woman thought to herself, "Well, pulled up. I now look like a kolobok from the fairy tale, a ball in the dress, by God, herself disgusted. After all, I asked my husband's relatives, let's sign early while the tummy is not visible yet." But no. Mother-in-law found a million excuses just to postpone the celebration for later. And now she's a mess, carrying triplets. Mary was completely fed up, and she decided to go to the toilet. Now she was running there all the time. This is also a peculiarity of such a complicated pregnancy. Laughing and holding the long hem of her dress with one hand, she went out into the foyer. And she ran into Wendy's mother-in-law, who was standing back and discussing with some important lady the whole action. "Oh, Pam, honey, I don't know how to live through such a drama. My son Mike, as if out of his mind, brought this orphanage girl pregnant with triplets. I had to go to a wedding. I almost fainted. And why all this has fallen on my head? We don't know whose kids they are. She's a sneaky girl. She could have lied for the capital's registration. And my Mike, you know how gullible he is, like a child. He's like a punishment. He can't help it. I thought he was going to marry Sally, the architect's daughter. Such a nice girl. Not like this one." Mary felt so bad, so hurt. She coughed loudly. Wendy jumped up, turned around, smiled sweetly, as if nothing had happened, and sang in a sweet voice, "Mary, baby, are you sick? You ain't got no face on you. Let me tell the chauffeur to take you home. In your condition you need more rest, and we'll finish here ourselves without you." The bride nodded, swallowing tears. She really felt very bad, especially after the hypocrisy of her mother-in-law, and she decided to leave her own wedding. After all, there were complete strangers and strangers all around her, not even a word to say to anyone. These rich snobs looked down on her with a slight contempt. At home, she cried for a long time, burying herself in her pillow, hoping that her husband, when he found out that she had left, would worry and rush to her, but no. Mike came back only in the morning, dead drunk, smelling of alcohol and other women's expensive perfume. He'd fallen asleep without even undressing as soon as he stepped into the bedroom. Mary felt even sadder, thinking sadly, "This is not the wedding I dreamed of. It's a travesty. We were humming without a bride. And what the hell?" Under the wild snoring of her husband, the young pregnant woman lay down and remembered how beautifully their love with Mike began. Mary hated her name since childhood. It seemed to her so ridiculous and stupid. It was given to her by the babysitters in the orphanage, and all because she was thrown there at the age of 3 in the first month of spring, on the eve of Women's Day. The girl remembered almost nothing from her past life at home, only scolding, tears, pleas, scraps of words of some woman. "Get up, let's go, and don't cry. I can't leave you. You'll live somewhere else." And a childish, clammy fear. That was all the memory. Who she was and where she came from, Mary did not know. No note or birth certificate was with her. In her 3 years, the girl was very neglected, spoke poorly, did not know her name, and was very afraid of people. Ducked even and closed, apparently. She lived at home was not sugar. Little by little she got used to it, thawed out, but she remained quiet and not very contactable. Her whole childhood in the orphanage was neither good nor bad. Nothing. Every day the same routine, up, down, lessons, walks, everything on a schedule. Other children who were taken away from home resisted such a regimen, organized boycotts, tantrums. They seemed unbearable, such a life. But Mary never knew the other, so she took everything calmly, thought it should be so. She studied very well. She was excellent. She was loved by teachers for her lively mind and calm, obedient character, and after graduation even patched up for her, knocked out a state apartment in an old house. A small truth, without repair, but cozy. Mary dreamed of becoming a doctor, so she enrolled in medical school. Here and part-time work was always possible, a nurse in the hospital. You had to live somehow. On one scholarship and payments are not much to go around. Outwardly, Mary was very pretty, a small height, with a dainty, like a chiseled figure and mischievous curls. She looked at her many boys. But the girl was not in a hurry to start a romance. She saw a lot in the orphanage and how to roll to the bottom of underage girls and how alcohol and tobacco dragged them down, but she did not want to. She gave herself an attitude: be sure to settle in the profession, career to make, and then you can get married. But you can't order your heart. Once she nursed a patient after abdominal surgery. It was an attractive young man with eyes as black as pitch. Mary liked him immediately. He was polite and well-mannered, winked at her, made beautiful compliments. Between the young people first arose friendship, and then love. Mike was not an easy guy, from a well-to-do family. His father was an entrepreneur, and his mother worked in the city administration. Mary was even shy at first, complexed but did not lie, honestly said that she was an orphan, and she does not have a rich family. But Mike was not embarrassed. On the contrary, he praised her. "You're doing great. You're making your own way. And study, and work part-time, and smart, and beautiful. I couldn't do it. My father sent me abroad to study, paid for everything and got sick of his tutelage. And my mother doesn't let me breathe. She's been giving me advice as if I were still 5 years old." Mary objected to him vehemently. "You fool, you don't realize your happiness. If someone cared for me so much and called me daughter, I would probably be the happiest. You think it's so cool to be an adult independent? Is that how you see it? You're wrong. It's scary when you have no one to lean on, no one to support you." The couple began to meet. Mary was burning with love, and of course she couldn't resist the pressure of her lover. All her former attitudes went to hell. The romance flared up with breakneck speed. The girl seemed that she is now the happiest in the world. Mike was so sensitive, tender, promised that now they are together forever, and never part. Her classmates were desperately jealous when her fiancé came to pick her up after lectures, and proud and happy Mary walked with him hand in hand to the car. She thought that she was fabulously lucky, because Mike was the one that a lot of girls were pining for, and he fell in love with her. But after a few months, everything changed. The girl began to vomit, all the time wanted to sleep and cry for no reason, and the cycle broke down. And when she took a test and saw 2 stripes, she was aghast. They were still so little dating, Mike had not yet had time to introduce her to his parents, and here was a pregnancy. Such a twist of fate was not part of their plans. The guys dreamed that they would go to the sea, have a vacation, and did not even think about anything serious. Moreover, Mary hadn't finished her studies yet, so what children? She and her fiancé hadn't even planned anything like that yet. They just loved each other, and that was all. She didn't know how to tell her fiancé about the pregnancy. Dragged on for a couple more months. She was so nervous, and then she decided, "Love, I have to go to the doctor tomorrow. Will you come with me? I really need your support. Please." Concerned groom agreed. "Of course, no problem. What's wrong? Are you sick?" Mary answered evasively. "Well, you could say that. We'll find out tomorrow." Mary took the guy with her to the ultrasound. The results shocked even her, and not to mention the fiancé. "She's having triplets." The doctor himself was astonished, long and intently stroked her abdomen, moved his lips and said, "Tax, 1, 2, wow, 3. It can't be. You're having triplets. Congratulations. This is very rare. I do not remember in my practice." And Mike waved his hands all the way from the hospital and resented. "Mary, how could we do this? You're a future medical student. Didn't you think to use protection? We're in trouble. How can I tell my parents now? They'll kill me. Where are we going to live? In your tiny 1 room, and 2 and 2 is cramped, and even the 5 of us. I do not have my own home yet. My father promised to give me an apartment in the bedroom district for the wedding, and now I do not even know how he even reacted to everything." The girl squelched her nose and babbled, "I don't know what to do. I'm in shock. I'm basically not ready for pregnancy yet. I need to finish my studies somehow, and here's a triplet. And do not need to yell at me as if I am alone to blame and you stood aside. I'm so scared myself. You're going to leave me now, aren't you? Why do you need me, an orphan, pregnant with triplets?" Mike thawed, hugged her, pressed her against him and said, "Don't cry, you can't. Nothing, I will not leave you. They are my children too. So you need to confess to your parents and get married." "Nothing. We'll manage together." I don't know how." Mary calmed down and cheered up, and soon they went to meet Mike's parents. But they didn't receive her very warmly, and when the boy asked his parents, "Mom, Dad, here's the thing. Mary and I love each other, and we have 3 kids coming, so we need to get married. That's the deal, Dad. Don't look at me like that." We're shocked. Linda even shrieked and clutched at her heart, and her father silently frowned. Then there were long, humiliating questions and arguments. Mary's biography was examined under a microscope, and she was even more disliked by the parents of the groom. Not only that, pregnant with triplets, but also this squat without a tribe, with nothing behind her soul. So a party for the only and adored son. But to do nothing, they had to accept the bride of the son. Moreover, it was decided to rent Mary's apartment, and the young will live in the mansion of businessmen. There will be a place for children to go wild. And Mary began a completely different adult family life. She now did not need to work part-time. The groom's relatives were categorically against it. Shame. Daughter-in-law nurse. At least she was allowed to finish her studies. Mary showed up for her state exams with a huge belly. She wanted her and Mike to get married before she had a belly, to make everything beautiful. 100 times imagined how we'll twirl in the dance with his beloved. Chose in the salon different styles. Tried on the veil and jewelry to the outfit. After all, a wedding for every girl is not just a celebration. It is a symbol of love, a rite, a memory for life. But Wendy deliberately postponed the wedding day 3 times, coming up with new excuses. She was sick. Her blood pressure was skyrocketing. She had business negotiations. She didn't like the restaurant. As if deliberately decided to move the celebration when Mary was already in labor. No figure, no beauty. Apparently she wanted to mock her, to make a fool of her in front of the guests. And in general, her mother-in-law was a very heavy person. It seemed that this iron woman is not capable of compassion, respect, to do good. She had the whole family and colleagues were under control, and obeyed her unconditionally. No, in person she smiled sweetly, fond. But as soon as Mike came home from work, she immediately locked herself in his father's office with him and started screwing him over. "Son, you have no idea what your nurse did today. She ruined your silk shirt, you bastard. She threw it in the wash and picked the wrong mode. She's been lying there 24 hours a day, turning from side to side. You've only known her a week and she's already had triplets. Are you sure they're your kids? We've never had twins in our family, much less triplets. Why would you put such a burden around your neck? What's wrong with her? She's just a simple girl. No intelligence, no higher education, not a penny to her name. Do you have any idea what it's like to have 3 kids screaming all the time? I'll go crazy. You'll drive yourself crazy. You're so young, you've got your whole life ahead of you. You're condemning yourself to sleepless nights and such a bondage. You yourself are still a child at heart, all used to live behind your mother. Where are you 3 children? Why? Come to your senses before it's too late." Mike was annoyed. "Mom, what do you suggest I do? Kick Mary out pregnant? What will people think of us? And anyway, I love her, but I really don't want kids yet. I can't even imagine what that would be like." "Well, I'll get used to it, I guess. What can I do?" The woman smiled sweetly. "Well, why immediately kick out you? How ugly. I have another proposal, and at the same time to check something." After such intimate conversations, Mike became himself not himself, irritated and angry. It seems that he was already not happy that soon to become a father. It seemed that then life would be over. You would be tied to the house forever. The wedding also turned out to be more like some cheap, silly production, just for show. Even in the registry office, Mike only mumbled something inarticulate and nervously began to put the ring on Mary's finger. And then he didn't notice her absence at all, and drank like that till morning. Is that the behavior of a man in love? Where was the tenderness, the warmth of their relationship? Was it all because of her pregnancy, for which they were both unprepared? 2 weeks passed, but the honeymoon was not even a honeymoon. Her husband's parents counted the money given to the newlyweds. Mary did not even know how much was there and did not see it, and with Mike they began to quarrel more and more often over nothing. He became annoyed that she was twisting and turning awkwardly all night, not allowing him to sleep. And her husband began to sleep separately, in another bedroom. Mary was very offended by this. She missed him all day long and wanted to cuddle with him at least at night. To be petted, just warmth and support. She was afraid of childbirth. She was afraid of what if she couldn't cope. She wouldn't give birth herself and would have to have a C-section, or something would go wrong with the babies. Mary herself was not quite ready for motherhood. She was a student yesterday, and now she was having triplets. There was no one to tell and cry to. No family, no loyal friends. She tried to be less nervous and tense, thinking that when Mike will take the babies in his arms, he will immediately love them, and everything will change. But the next day, her husband shocked her even more. "I'm going on a business trip tomorrow, a week for 3 weeks. I need to settle important issues at work. You here do not miss me." Tears came to the woman's eyes. "How can it be, Mike? I'm not honey here. Your mother does not like me. My father is not kindly looking at me. And you're leaving me. What if I go into labor early? It's not uncommon in multiple pregnancies, I've read about it. What would I do alone? Doctors are already in doubt whether to do a C-section or not. How can you go away and leave me at such a crucial moment? Please stay. Don't scare me even more." Husband frowned. "You do not read nonsense. You still have a month to walk for sure. And you are not alone. If anything, parents will take you to the hospital. Understand? I'm trying for us. I earn money. And you are capricious, like a little child. I'm at the beginning of my career. I need to prove myself." Mary was offended but did not make a scandal, saw her husband off and began to wait for him. Life in the rich mansion of her parents-in-law reminded her of an orphanage, but of luxury. Everything on schedule, only as desired by the mistress, and no one asked her daughter-in-law's opinion in any matter. Everyone walked by as if not noticing her, and it was so humiliating. One night she began to feel sick, her stomach was petrified, and she went into labor. Mary was terrified, and she barely made it to her mother-in-law's room screaming, "Help me! Open up! I'm sick!" Wendy looked out. "Why are you yelling in the middle of the night? You haven't given birth yet, and you're already so restless. What's the matter with you?" Mary was writhing in pain and begging to be saved. She was getting worse. Sweat was pouring into her eyes. Her hands were shaking and her stomach was hurting more and more. Her mother-in-law immediately called a medical team to get her out of harm's way and kept wailing, "Tack, you need to pack your things. Where are your documents? Don't shout like a madwoman. Be patient. God forbid you start giving birth to me here. You're nothing but trouble. Well, we're here at last. Let's get dressed." Mary was taken immediately to the hospital. The situation was critical, threatening to collapse. She was drip-dried for 24 hours, struggled, and managed to keep the pregnancy alive. But she was strictly forbidden to leave the maternity hospital until she gave birth. The young woman rushed to call her husband. She wanted so much that he came back early, supported in a difficult moment, was near. But his phone was out of range all the time. Her mother-in-law didn't pick up the phone either. Mary was nervous. "What's the matter? Are they conspiring? How will I be here alone? There's no one to bring me a parcel." It was good that Mary had time to put some money in her pocket, but the amount was small, for a week, 2 weeks, and even less if you buy medicine. Days stretched like rubber, and no one came to her and her calls were not answered. A terrible guess was born in her head. Had Mike dumped her and changed his number? He couldn't have been out of touch for so many days. Mary cried into her pillow, nervous. Neighbors on the ward pity her in a feminine way, feeding her, whoever gave her an apple or a tangerine. The woman also became friends with a kind old nurse, Anne. She also felt sorry for the poor woman in labor and tried to communicate with her more, to cheer her up. Sometimes she even brought her homemade food, because everyone knows how they feed in hospitals. Everything is tasteless and bland. But Mary was not getting any easier. She was already in labor, and her husband had not shown up. Then the woman in labor asked Anne, "Please help me. I'm so worried. Maybe something terrible has happened to Mike. Why did he disappear? Where did he go? He couldn't just leave me here forever, could he? We're married after all. I don't believe it. What if he's in some kind of trouble? Please go to this address. Give me my note. Maybe you'll bring me some news. I'm going crazy with bad thoughts." The nurse agreed to help, and on her next shift, she went to Mary's first thing. She was waiting for her, looking her in the eye. But what Anne told her shocked her. "Your husband's alive and he's not even coughing, you bastard. I saw him leave the mansion and get into a car with some bimbo. I said, 'So-and-so, I'm giving him a note.' And he looked at me strangely, at the woman next to him, and as if nothing had happened, he said, "You lady, have the wrong address. I don't know any Mary, sorry." He didn't even read the note, tore it up and threw it away. But I could tell from his eyes he was lying. "So girl, be strong. He dumped you for sure. He decided to forget you forever. What a family. They're not human beings." Mary sobbed. A huge ball of pain exploded inside her and water poured under her feet. The nurse splashed her hands. "Oh my God, you're giving birth. I'll run for the doctor. Hold on, I'll be right back." Surprisingly, the labor went well. The obstetrician was a professional. Even surgery was not necessary. And 2 boys and a girl were born. Mary looked at those tiny, squeaky little lumps and sobbed, both with joy and grief at the same time. She was at a complete loss and did not know how to go on, how to live. She kept hoping for a miracle. What if it was all a mistake, a bad dream? Maybe Mike would come to his senses and come and get her, pick her up from the hospital. But the miracle never happened. She was to be discharged the day after tomorrow, and the woman had no envelope for the children. Nothing at all. Mary was very nervous. She was in a panic, and again asked for help from this kind woman. "Anne, I have no one else to ask. Help me. I have an apartment. It is now rented. Can you go to them and tell them to move out immediately? I need a place to live. It's a shame. Everyone is taken from the maternity hospital by someone, husbands or relatives at least, and I am again like in childhood, an orphan, an outcast. I can't carry 3 of them myself. I don't even have a stroller." The nurse consoled her. "Don't worry so much, girl. Don't kill yourself. I'll do everything. You'll go home. You know what? I'll ask my brother to meet you. He will bring flowers, balloons. No worse than people, everything will go. Ethan, I have a very good, kind, sympathetic, limping but on the left leg. Saved once, saved a child. Right out from under the wheels, pulled out, and he himself suffered. That's how you do good deeds. Don't worry, it'll be hard at first. There are so many kids. I'll also call the mayor's office because triplets are rare for our city. Maybe they'll give you a bigger apartment or help with money. It'll be easier for you. And my brother and I will help. I see you're a good woman. Your husband was just a jerk. It's while the kids are small it seems scary, but then you have such a defense and support will grow. I've been a loner all my life. Do you know how sickening it is? And here it is, the day of discharge. Neighbors on the ward helped Mary to tidy up, makeup, it's no joke, and people from the mayor's office came to film her. The nurse's brother Ethan was waiting for her downstairs. He was a nice man, tall, but he limped badly on his left leg. He gave her the flowers and hugged Mary, whispering to her, "Hold on, smile, I'll help you now." Then they were surrounded by the city hall, began to ask everything, interviewed, and promised to allocate a 3-room apartment as a mother heroine. And then Anne and her brother put her in a cab and helped her home. Mary entered her cramped 1-room apartment and sighed heavily. Tears began to choke her. How would she cope with the kids alone? No stroller, no cribs, nothing at all. And most importantly, she felt resentment towards Mike. She felt damaged, thrown out of life, and she decided that she would survive to spite everyone and prove that she did not need such a scumbag, and she would not ask for a penny from this family. And at the same time in the family of businessmen raging passions, because the TV flashed a story about the mother of the heroine, who gave birth to 3 children. Of course, everyone saw that Mary was met by some man with a limp, but the clip was not long. Mostly Mary and the babies were filmed. Wendy yelled, "Look at that poor orphanage. I told you the kids weren't yours and you didn't believe me." She was met by the children's real father. "It's not for nothing that I sent a chauffeur with a camera. He should have filmed everything. Then we'll see closer who she slept with in secret from you." Mike had his doubts. Maybe she met someone else. Maybe she asked someone. "Anyway, Mom, we did a bad thing. We can't do that. I love Mary, and you're making me leave her and the kids too. She and I are husband and wife." Wendy got up and screamed, "What kind of a fool are you? You don't believe me? All right, the chauffeur will bring you the camera footage. You'll see for yourself who was hanging around the nurse. I love you. I'll never love you again. Don't get all snooty. I don't want another man's triplets in my house. They're not your kids, I'm sure. So your Mary's not going anywhere. She won't get an apartment from the mayor's office. I'll take care of that. I work in the administration myself. She's got nothing to live on, so she'll come crawling to your feet to make peace with you. At least we got her out in the open, because she was lying that she had no one but you. She pretended to be a saint. They're all like that at the orphanage. Mike was a bastard, and always lived by his mother's orders. He never had his own personal opinion. His overbearing mother had crushed it in early childhood. Therefore, although he loved his wife in his heart, and his conscience tormented him, but he did not dare to disobey his mother, and behaved nasty. But secretly, he still hoped that Mary would really come running to him for help, and they would make up. The chauffeur gave the camera tape to his mistress while she was on her way to an important presentation. Wendy had spent a long time preparing for it, making a lot of interesting slides. She made a brilliant opening speech. There were a lot of important people from the business sphere in the hall, and inserted a flash drive so that everyone could see her presentation on the big screen. But she mixed it up, and instead of the one she needed, she put in the one with the recording from the hospital. When the video of Mary's discharge from the hospital was shown, Ethan was in the frame. He was meeting her instead of her husband. Everyone in the audience gasped, because many of those present were at their son's wedding and saw Mary in person. But why isn't Mike with her? And who is the man next to him? And what was this all about in a business presentation anyway? Wendy realized that she had made a stupid mistake and immediately changed the flash drive to the right one, apologized and continued with the presentation. But it was crumpled and didn't have the desired effect, because everyone was gossiping and discussing a completely different movie. And one of the businessmen, Oliver, barely made it to the end of the event. He was not himself, because he recognized the man in the video, Ethan. It's the same stranger who saved his 8-year-old son in the driveway a year ago. The thing is that at that moment the boy's father was on a long business trip. Everything happened without him. Upon arrival, he watched the video from the cameras at the intersection where everything happened, and well remembered the face of the Savior. But who he was and where he was from remained unknown. While the ambulance crew was dealing with the child, he disappeared somewhere, even refused medical help. No matter how much Oliver tortured the nanny, she didn't tell him anything. And the grateful father wanted so much to say thank you to this noble man, a real hero. And now he saw him again. Oliver didn't waste time. He found out through acquaintances that Wendy's son had left his wife and children, didn't even come to the discharge, and found out where she was registered and went there. He had no other lead. It was his only chance to find out anything about that person. Knowing that he was going to visit small children, he bought diapers and toys, not empty-handed. A pale as a shadow, thin young woman came to the threshold. She invited him in, though she was very surprised to see him. After all, they were strangers. Mary rattled on. "I beg your pardon. Can we hurry up? What do you want? I have triplets. You can hear what songs they sing. It's time to feed them. I don't have time for anything. And the porridge is burning. I think I'll turn it off." Oliver handed her the presents and asked, Yes, I won't distract you for long. Who was the man who picked you up from the maternity ward? I happened to see the tape. I'd really like to see him. I don't know how to find him. And these are packages for you and the kids' goodies." Mary was so pleased and embarrassed. A stranger decided to do something nice, and she replied, "Thank you very much. The man's name is Ethan. He is the brother of the nurse. We became friends in the hospital. He is very good, kind, here, helped me out, helped me take the kids home, and that alone 3 of them and cannot carry. And the bastard husband left us, well, God judge him and his mom. We'll live without them. I'll text you where to find Anne. Such wonderful people. They help me as much as they can. I wouldn't be able to walk with my kids without them. I don't have a stroller. Oh, I'm rambling, I'm sorry again, I have to feed the babies." Mary's life really wasn't very good. There was no other income except for the child allowance, and it was not much of an income. Ethan and Anne helped as they could. Somewhere on Familiar found old cribs. Ethan collected them himself, baby clothes, a bathtub, but only a stroller for triplets could not be found. They had to walk together with someone and hold the children in their arms, and it was very hard and uncomfortable. And lifting 3 babies was a challenge. Mary slept for 2 or 3 hours. All day long she was spinning around near the children, endlessly washing diapers. She became like a shadow, lost 10 pounds. It's only in the movies children do everything in unison, sweetly fall asleep, play, but life was a complete nightmare. As soon as Alex started crying, Steve immediately picked up, and when they managed to calm them down, Lori started her song. If it weren't for Anne and Ethan's help, she would not have been able to cope, and so a gracious single woman would come to her house for a couple of hours on the weekends, and she and Ethan would take the kids for a walk, and Mary would immediately fall asleep like a dead woman. And yet, despite all the hardships of life, Mary made up her mind and was the first to file for divorce. When Mike got the notice to appear in court, he couldn't believe his eyes. He immediately ran to tell his mom again, "Mom, it's over. Mary filed for divorce and I'm going to court, and you promised she'd come to make up, that she couldn't raise 3 kids on her own. What about me? What am I supposed to do now? I thought I'd go out like I used to, at the club with my friends. I didn't want the responsibility. I even slept with a cool girl. I don't know. It's not the same. I miss Mary." Wendy was already angry after the taping incident and started yelling at her son. "Why do you keep yelling at me? Why don't you use your head? If he doesn't ask for help and you're going to get a divorce, then I'm right about everything. How else do you get it into your head? So that man is her boyfriend and the father of the kids, and she's probably banging him in bed. And you're still pining after that orphan, for Christ's sake. What's the world coming to an end with her? Don't you have any other girls? Shake it off and forget that bitch. What a bastard, she's getting a divorce. Look how brave she is. We won't recognize the children. They're not ours, so she won't get alimony." At the same time, Oliver found Ethan thanks to Mary and came to his house. From the threshold, he began to thank him. "Hello, Ethan. I finally found you. It was you who saved my Vadik from death then, pulled out from under the wheels. And yourself turned out to have suffered so much. I couldn't find you then. Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. What can I do for you? Can I take you to a good doctor? Or is there anything else you need? Just tell me." Ethan was embarrassed and began to tell. "What's the big deal? Anyone in my place would have done the same. Your boy on your bike on the roadway flew out on the roadway, and then the car to meet. Well, there was no time to think. I'm glad I was able to help the kid. I don't like to make a fuss, and there were people running around, so I left. I thought it was just a bruise and waddled home. But my leg was getting more and more puffy and painful. It turned out to be a fracture. I was in a cast for a long time, and then it was not as if it had been broken. Anyway, I limp a lot now." Oliver shook his head. "I'm so sorry about that. Thank you again for your son. Can I ask you an indiscreet question? Who's Mary? I went to see her today. I got to know her. It's very difficult for her, poor girl. You can see that she needs." Ethan revived. His eyes lit up at the mention of a young mother. "I met her by chance. My sister works as a nurse. Asked her to help her, from the hospital to meet. Her scumbag husband abandoned her, and her children too. She suffers, poor woman. He left her penniless, the bastard. My sister and I are helping Mary as much as we can. But what can we do? I didn't always live like this. I had a great job at a big firm. I'm an executive. And then I was framed, accused of missing merchandise, prosecuted, but it was only a short sentence. Now I've got this limp, I can't get a proper job, so I'm a janitor 24/7. I'd like Mary to get a stroller for triplets, but new ones are very expensive. I can't afford them because triplets are a rare miracle." Oliver listened attentively, did not interrupt, and marveled at the responsiveness and courage of this man. He himself has a lot of problems, and he cares about a young stranger. The businessman said decisively, "You know what, Ethan, and go to my company, first as a manager and then we'll see. The salary is decent, the schedule is good, and the stroller I will take on myself. For me it's not money. I will be happy to help a poor mom." Ethan was so happy. "Thank you very much. I will gladly agree. I will not let you down. I will work hard. My sister will be happy. She is so worried about me." Since that moment, the life of our heroes has changed a lot. Ethan began to work in a large company. He turned out to be an excellent manager, and his career quickly went uphill. Oliver was very pleased with the new employee and valued Ethan, paid generous bonuses. The businessman kept his word and bought a luxury stroller for the triplets. Mary was delighted when she saw it. She would never have been able to buy such a stroller. Now walking with the babies was a joy. The kids enjoyed sleeping in the fresh air, and their appetite was better. The woman became very close to Ethan. He had become a part of their family, surrounded her with care, helped her in everything. They were good and calm with each other. Soulmates. What can I say? The pain of betrayal of her husband began to fade. Mary only now realized that she and her ex-husband were completely different people, and between them was probably not love but passion. Passionate love. Now she had no regrets about the divorce anyway. Life in the house of her spouse with a harmful mother-in-law was not good for her. Ethan and Anne helped Mary to get a 3-room apartment from the city hall, and now the large family no longer lived in a cramped 1-room apartment. Time flew by, the kids went to kindergarten, and Mary finally got a job in her specialty, a nurse in the same department where she had once given birth. She had long ago gotten into the schedule. Her whole day and evening was planned. She learned to keep up with everything. And Ethan was always by her side, like a faithful knight, and it made the woman's soul so easy and calm. The children called him Daddy, reached out to him, and the man melted, hugged them tightly, and called them his favorite gnomes. But things were bad in Wendy's family. The former mother-in-law was removed from her position, and her husband went bankrupt, unsuccessfully invested. Their business was on the verge of collapse. Mike began to drink, and constantly blamed his mother for ruining his family and making him do such a despicable thing. He never got over the gentle and loving Mary, and he was tormented by his conscience. He even tried to reconcile with her, cut off the phone, but now his ex-wife ignored him or turned off the phone like he used to do. In the high society, members of their family and no one gave a hand, after everyone found out how nasty they did to his daughter-in-law and 3 grandchildren, so even animals do not do. Mike started gambling in casinos and squandering the rest of his parents' capital. He rented girls for the night, but they didn't bring him 1/100th of the warmth that Mary had given him. Wendy panicked. She saw her son going under, all because of her. She hated her former daughter-in-law even more. After all, her plan had failed miserably. She had only wanted to mock, to teach the nurse a lesson, to expect Mary to come crawling back in despair, begging to be taken home again, like a stray kitten. But that's not what happened. The daughter-in-law not only did not ask for help even once, but also filed for divorce first, and now lives happily, and the lame janitor became a successful manager in a rival company. Then the woman decided to offer her son another meanness. "Mike, son, and if I sue from this bastard your children, will you forgive me? They will live with you. You are their father." Mike became animated and replied, "I'd give anything for that." Wendy started to sue and got on Mary's nerves again, but it didn't work. They were screaming at every corner that they weren't their children, so the daughter-in-law said, "Mike is not the father. They are not his children, so leave me alone and let me live in peace." Wendy screamed, "You're lying, you're lying, you're lying. You don't want to give your children to their father out of revenge, and I'll prove it. I'll do a genetic test." Mary exclaimed, "You have no right without my permission, and I'll never give it. Disappear from my life once and for all, I beg you. You yourself abandoned me in the maternity hospital, recanted, did not want to know. I was like a bone in your throat. So be happy. I'm no longer in your life. Why don't you live peacefully again?" Thanks to the skillful tactics of Ethan's lawyer, the court sided with the mother, and the case was closed, and Mike and Wendy left without a penny to eat. Already on the porch, Mike clutched Mary's arm and begged her, "I'm sorry, darling, please forgive me. I was a fool to listen to my mother. I still love you, I cannot forget." Mary pulled her hand away and looked at her ex-husband with contempt. "You can't forget, and I don't want to remember about you. Never, do you hear? What kind of husband are you, the father of children? You're a spineless mama's boy. You do what she tells you to do. You know, Mike, I'm grateful to you. I really am. If you hadn't betrayed me like that, if you hadn't dumped me, I never would have met the man I deserve and been happy. I'm not saying goodbye to you. I'm saying goodbye forever." And she left with her head held high and her heels tapping confidently, and Mike wanted to howl and scream because he had ruined everything with his own hands. After the trial, he went completely off the rails, started gambling and drinking wildly, and hated his own mother. Soon he lost big to gangsters, mortgaged his house and property. Serious people took everything, but it wasn't enough for them. Wendy seemed to have grown 15 years older, slumped, and out of anger and hopelessness whispered to the criminal creditors that Mike had Mary's own children. They could steal them and get a tidy sum for the rest of the debt. She was not poor now. She wanted to punish, to make Mary suffer. It had long been an obsession of the half-crazed woman. On that terrible day, Mary picked up the children from kindergarten after work and decided to take a little walk with them in the park. The kids liked to play on the playground and began to mold sand puppets, running, laughing. And the woman took out her cell phone and wanted to call Ethan, to ask him what to make for dinner. While she was fumbling in her purse, she was distracted for a couple of minutes, and then she heard other moms shouting, "Hey, who are you? Where are you going?" Mary saw two men in hoods and caps pick up her babies and run to the car, push them in and take them away. She ran after them without remembering herself, tripped, fell, and screamed hoarsely, "Stolen! The children have been stolen! Somebody help! People!" There was a rush and a stampede, but the kidnappers were gone. And Mary was hysterical. She screamed like a madwoman, fell to the ground. One of the passers-by thought to call an ambulance and the police. Ethan found Mary in the hospital. She was sedated, and she only repeated bloodless lips, "Ethan, find the children, please. I'll die without them. I can't stand it. Maybe they've already been killed, or tortured, or sold. Who could have done that and why? Tell me." The man hugged her as tightly as he could and promised, "Don't say that. The police are already looking for them, combing the city. They'll find the children, I'm sure. But you have to help them. The investigator will come to you now. Try to describe the kidnappers and their car as accurately as possible, please. A lot depends on it." Mary managed to pull herself together. For the sake of the kids, she was ready for anything. Her hands were shaking and tears were flowing, but she tried to make a sketch, and most importantly, she memorized the license plate number of the kidnappers and Micah. This helped in the search. The car was traced at the exit from the city, on a forest road. Then the trail was lost. They searched the neighborhood. Nothing. Mary begged Ethan, "I beg you, let's go there. I'll find my babies with my heart. It won't deceive me. I can't sit idle knowing how bad my babies are." The man hesitated. "Honey, but you can barely stand on your feet. You were barely brought to your senses." Mary looked at Ethan as if she'd been burned, and replied sharply, "Or you'll take me there, or I'll run away from the hospital and find the children. I will tear anyone. I will dig the ground, but I will find my relatives." They went to the place where the search was going on. They traveled through a lot of surrounding villages, showed photos of the children and asked about them. But no one had seen anything. Ethan was very upset. It was almost dark outside, he urged. "Honey, we need to go back. Tomorrow we will continue the search. It's already dark. We will not know anything anyway." But Mary was like a woman possessed. She begged, "No, I'm not leaving until I find the babies. Please, please understand me. Please hear me. My heart stops. I can't sleep anyway. Let's ask around some more, please." He couldn't bear to see her unbearable suffering, and agreed not to leave her alone. They were already leaving the village, and at the very edge of it, in the woods, they saw the forester's cottage, with light in the windows, which meant that the owner was at home. Mary was suddenly alarmed and rushed there. Her heart was racing. She started to knock on the window. An elderly forester with a beard came out. He looked at the crying woman and her companion with surprise, listened to their confused speech, thought for a long time, and then said, "I have lived here all my life. I know every nook and cranny. There is only one place where kidnappers can hide undetected, a temporary house on the marshes. Rarely anyone goes there. The place is very unsociable and frightening. I sleep there sometimes. When there is a lot of work in the forest, I put salt in the elk feeders. The cabin has supplies of everything necessary and a stove. Come with me. I'll bring my rifle just in case." They wandered for a long time until they found the cabin, looked around, and suddenly noticed a faint light in the tiny window. Mary even shrieked, and the forester put his finger to his lips. "Quiet. There is such an echo here. You can hear it a kilometer away. There's definitely someone out there. You wait here and I'll go on a reconnaissance. I'm a forester, and if I show up there, it won't arouse suspicion." Mary did not breathe and prayed, watching from behind the bushes as the forester went around the house from all sides, thought of something, and then suddenly opened the door cleverly, hooking it from the outside. And next came the sound of a struggle and a gunshot. Mary couldn't wait a second. She rushed there, followed by Ethan. While they ran up, the forester had already twisted the frail man and tied his hands behind his back. Mary burst into the house. It was warm, and on the couch sat, huddled together, frightened babies. She rushed to them, began to hug and kiss them. Every finger, every nose, happiness overwhelmed her. The forester kicked the kidnapper, but he denied it. "I didn't kidnap anyone. I found the children in a neighboring village. There was an abandoned house there, and I'm wandering around without a place to live." And then I saw some criminals carrying the kids into the house, and the kids were crying a lot, and then 2 of them left, and the third stayed behind to guard them. I'm not a fool. I was in jail myself, and I immediately realized that these were not their children, and that they must have been stolen. So I took a moment while he went to the bathroom and jumped in, grabbed 3 of them as best I could, and came here with them. I melted the stove so they wouldn't freeze. I thought I'd run to the police in the morning and tell them everything. But where did I go with them at night? You don't believe me? I fed them dry bread, gave them water. I would never do anything to kids. Mary and Ethan took the children away, and the forester muttered, "The district officer will sort it out. Now get going." People wander around and then the kids disappear. The vagrant was given into the hands of the district officer, and Mary finally took her little ones home. They were so happy to their mother, hugging her with small hands, and she could not unclench the embrace. Tears were running down her face, but now they were tears of happiness. The police got to the bottom of it all and unraveled a whole tangle of crimes. The hermit, who was found with the children in the hut, was not a kidnapper, but a savior. He showed where the children were. They found evidence, fingerprints, and came to the former jailers. They managed to arrest them, and they gave up all those involved in the case, and their boss and Wendy. She was arrested too. When the quarrelsome woman found out that her cunning plan had failed this time, the children and her hated ex-sister-in-law were not hurt, but she was now facing a prison sentence, and Mike's head was promised to be torn off. Wendy's mind went crazy. She went crazy, shouted curses, and was completely insane. They had to put her in a psychiatric hospital for involuntary treatment. Eventually, she stopped recognizing people and became a living corpse drugged up. It's a cruel but very just retribution for all the evil she's done. And Mike was missing in action. Gone. Apparently serious people found him. The father of the family after all this happened and soon died of a heart attack. So, from a rich and famous family of businessmen, there was no one left at all, and all to blame for hatred, greed, and malice. Mary and Ethan decided to find that vagrant and thank him for saving the kids because, in fact, if not for him, there is no telling how it would have ended. They found him in one of the village derelicts and invited him to their home to stay. The poor man was so tired of wandering that he immediately agreed. He had forgotten what a clean bed and a warm home were like. Mary was busy, gave the guest her husband's clean clothes, a towel, and sent him to the shower, and set the table while Ethan was busy with the kids. Then all sat down to dinner, got to know each other normally at last. Ethan, being the master of the house, started first. "Harry, Mary and I are eternally indebted to you. You saved our babies, kept them warm, kept them warm. It's scary to imagine what those thugs wanted to do to them. You're a real hero. Tell us a little bit about yourself, why you're on the street. Maybe Mary and I can help you." The man fidgeted and fidgeted in his chair. "You say that too, Harry. I've forgotten what it sounds like. I haven't been called by my first name in 10 years. It's a long story, but I've wasted my life in a blink of an eye. I once had everything, and a wife and a daughter, worked as an electrician at the plant, and lived far away from here, 1,000 kilometers away. And then disaster happened at the plant. My partner was electrocuted through my fault, and I was dragged through the courts and given a sentence. My wife didn't wait for me. She left me for someone else, and my daughter turned against me, so I got out. I had nowhere to live, no family, no job with a criminal record. So I broke down, spit on everything, and started to wander. I got to these places, warmed myself with a hair on the train, and fell asleep. Now I'm nestled in the village. The locals chased me at first, did not pity me, but then they realized that I'm not dangerous. They got used to me. They feed me sometimes, and I do what I can to help with the household. That's how I live. It seems that I have atoned for my sin in full, but I still can't sleep well. All my partner stands before my eyes and looks at me with reproach. And thank you, kind people, for sheltering me at least for a while. I had forgotten how it is to be in a family. And I love children very much. When I was sent to prison, my daughter was 6. How I adored her. I could not breathe. Tears stood in Mary's eyes. She was very sorry for Harry. Such a terrible, difficult, and twisted fate. He wasn't a bad person. He was just unlucky. The woman consulted with her husband, and they decided to keep the guest for good, so that he could wander until death. Mary imagined that it was her father, whom she had never known, and she felt she had to help him. And so the six of them began to live together, a big family. Anne, too, was now a frequent visitor and stayed overnight. Harry was happy to take care of the children, to walk with them, to play with them. He seemed to forget himself at this time. Even his wrinkles smoothed out. He got better, fresher, and began to look quite decent. And so that acquaintances asked less about what was going on, they told everyone that Mary had found her father. Their relationship really was so warm and heartfelt. Harry was eternally grateful to this family, that they let a complete stranger into their life, into their world, gave warmth and care completely unselfishly, without asking for anything in return. And all because both Mary and Ethan had suffered in their lives, and knew how important and priceless when in the most difficult moment you reach out a helping hand. From this life-saving straw, sometimes the whole life of a person turns in another direction and troubles at once recede. So in Mary's life, thanks to Anne and Ethan, everything changed, and it seemed such a dead-end and hopeless situation was resolved. She got through, did not give up, survived without her scoundrel husband, and became a happy, beloved, and confident woman, who now no difficulties will certainly not be frightened. Ethan's noble deed was also echoed by Oliver's outstretched helping hand in a difficult moment, and at once the clouds were dispelled and life went on well. He had once been abandoned by his fiancée without waiting for her from prison, and he had become disillusioned with women, thinking that he would never have children. Who needs him with such a limp? But now he is the head of a large family, next to his favorite woman and 3 charming fidgets. He had long ago loved them as his own, and the children called and considered him their father. Mary, Ethan, and Harry had a difficult past. That's why they appreciated every minute of warm communication, and did not waste it on swearing. It turned out that Harry was an avid fisherman. He got everyone addicted to it, and now the family's favorite weekend activity was fishing. The men were catching fish, and Mary and the kids were catching butterflies with a net and sunbathing. The woman looked lovingly at her little buttons and thought, "How stupid I was that I was afraid to give birth to triplets. I thought I would be lost." And it turned out to be difficult only the first year, but now it is fun and great. 3 little people love her and call her affectionately, "Mommy." This is the best reward.